the teacher!
Hey guys, in this video I'm explaining standard form of a line and also comparing it to slope Y-intercept form. I am going to be going through a word problem as well, so it might be a little longer than normal. So standard form of a line has two forms. There's ax plus by plus c is equal to 0, and there's also ax plus by equals d. So you might be wondering, what on earth does this mean? Unlike slope y-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, a, b, c don't mean anything. It's not anything to do with the slope. Unlike these ones where y meant dependent, m meant slope, and this meant initial value, a, b, c don't mean anything. Same thing with d. The reason why d is a separate letter, and you might be thinking, why isn't this c, is because if I were to bring my c value to the other side, because it's going to be some number, like let's say c was equal to 4, if I bring it to the other side of the equal sign in inverse operations, the opposite of this would be -4. 4 and -4 are not the same thing. 4 degrees outside is not the same as -4 degrees outside. That's why this is a different letter, and I just made it orange so you can see the distinguishing part. This isn't supposed to be there. So then, what is the point of learning standard form? The main benefit that standard form is useful for is if your x and y variables are not dependent on each other. You don't really have a dependent variable, and we're going to go through an example afterwards. In slope y-intercept form, it's much better for graphing, and it's also much better if you have clear independent and dependent variables because the y is denoted as dependent. So this form, you should know, is in standard form. How do I convert it to y-intercept form? It's using your inverse operations. In slope y-intercept form, y is by itself. It is the dependent variable. I want to keep it that way, and y is always on the left side because it's by itself. So I have to bring the other people over. So in x plus y plus 3, the opposite of getting rid of the x would be subtracting x. Not multiplying, not dividing, because there's no multiplication in this equation. I have to subtract x, and I have to subtract 3. And I do this on both sides. And why did I subtract x? Because I want to get rid of it. X minus x is 0. 3 minus 3 is 0. And I want it to go on the other side of the equal sign. 0 means nothing, so I don't have to worry about doing 0 minus x minus 3. I can just simplify it to y equals -x minus 3. What if we have a little bit more complicated? Now y is not by itself, it has a 2 there. You're still going to do the same thing. I still want my y on the left side, which it already is, so that's fine. I still want to bring x to the other side and 3 to the other side. What's the opposite? It's the same thing in this case. They're both subtraction. So when I rewrite this, I'm going to have 2y is equal to -x minus 3. How do I get rid of the 2? Again, inverse operations. You're doing the opposite. There is a teeny tiny multiplication sign. Anytime you don't see an operation between two terms, two things, a coefficient and a variable, it means that they're multiplied together. So what's the opposite of multiply? It's divide. So I'm going to divide this by 2, and I want to divide this whole thing by 2. Now you might start saying, well, I've isolated for y. 2 divided by 2 is 1y. Not 0, but 1y, because I don't want to get rid of the y. I still want it there. But this doesn't look like y-intercept form, slope y-intercept form. It looks like a giant fraction. So for you guys, if you're writing it in slope y-intercept form, you should recognize that if I have 2 as a denominator for both of them, this can be rewritten as -x over 2 minus 3 over 2. Both of them are over 2. So you can merge it into here, but because we're doing slope y-intercept form, you might not want to do that. And then you might still ask, but x wasn't on a fraction, x was just on the side. If you remember though, fractions with a variable on the top can be rewritten as the final answer, which is this number is like -1 times x. So the slope is -1/2 times x minus 3/2. Then you might be like, but doesn't it matter if x is on the top or x is on the bottom? How do you know? You know because x is a whole number. There is a 1 on the bottom. 2 times 1 is still 2. -1 times x is the same as -1x or -x. So when you rewrite it, and you guys should be pretty comfortable. Oops. No. You guys should be pretty comfortable though with this now, okay? If you're not, you might need to do more practice. I am going to make a solving equations video later, but this would be your final answer in proper y equals mx plus b form. Last example, 4x minus 2y plus 16 is equal to 0. You're going to do the same thing. I want my -2y on the left. I'm going to bring everything else over. It's still subtraction in this case. So -2y is equal to -4x minus 16. There's an invisible multiplication sign when I don't have any operations in between. So opposite of multiply, divide both sides by -2. I'm going to divide this whole thing by -2, and it is simplified to y equals -4 divided by -2 is 2x, and -16 divided by -2 is +8. So this would be my final answer for converting it into slope y-intercept form. Now what happens if we have a word problem? So example 2, Amir earns $9 per hour working in a coffee shop and $11.25 per hour working in a grocery store. Last week he earned $288. So the question is, write an equation to represent this problem, use let statements. We're going to do B later, don't worry about that for now. So which form is easier in this case to use? Is the $9 per hour working in a coffee shop dependent on him working at a grocery store? No, it's not. These two terms, the coffee shop time and the grocery store time, they're not related to each other except for the fact that it helps you with his total earnings. So slope y-intercept form is much harder to conceive in this case. Standard form is much easier. So if I were to write the equation, I'm going to put the coffee shop in red, and my let statements, I'm just going to type this one out. So we're going to say let x represent the time worked in coffee shop, and let y represent the time worked in the grocery store. What would the equation then be? So he gets paid $9 per hour for the coffee shop. So his pay is $9 per however many hours. I don't know how many hours that is, so I'm going to put X plus however many hours he's worked at the grocery store. So he's paid $11.25 Y for the number of hours, because he's not working the same hours at the coffee shop and the grocery store. That's why we have to have two different variables. And he made $288. So this is much easier to conceive. If I were to convert it into y equals mx plus b, it's going to get really messy. You're going to have 1125y is equal to 288 subtract 9x. You have to divide everything by 1125. So y is equal to 25.6 minus 0.8x, which makes this equation much more meaningful to us than this one. Next part of the question was, what are the x-intercepts and what do they mean in this case? So unless you converted it to slope y-intercept form, it's pretty simple to figure out what your x and y intercepts are. For all x-intercepts, my y value is 0. Anything times 0 is 0, so this actually disappears. So I would be left with just 9x is equal to 288. And it's the same thing for the y-intercept. The x disappears. So you divide both sides by 9, or divide this part by 1125, and you're going to get x equals 32 and y equals 25.6. In slope y-intercept form, the y-intercept's super easy because it's already in the equation. It's 25.6, so you don't actually have to do anything for that one. But to figure out what the x-intercept is, it's a bit more work. Nothing you can't handle. It's still, we make y value 0, then we bring the negative 0.8x over to the other side to make it positive, and then you can divide both sides by 0.8, and you're going to get the same answers. So then the next question is, which one's easier for you? You can decide which one you find easier. It really depends on the person, but you need to choose what's best for you. So the next part of it was, what does the y and x intercept mean? So if y is 0, that means that I did not work at that grocery store. I've only worked at the coffee shop. So it means that if I worked only at the coffee shop and I made $288 by the end of the week, it means that I can only work a maximum of 32 hours at the coffee shop to make $288. Same thing with the y-intercept. I can only work a maximum of 25.6 hours at the grocery store to make the same amount of money. That's what the intercepts mean. It shows you the maximum points for each variable, whatever that is in the context. And that's, hopefully the comparison between standard form and slope y-intercept form is more clear. Quiz time! On your tax sheet, answer the following questions. We're going to take it up in class. You want to pause the video. It is not for marks. Good luck!